Easier doing it in that order. And then we'll share screen and we'll get going. Sorry, I've got too many screens going on here. Let me just don't want to share the wrong one with you. Right, here it comes. Right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Right, let's get going then. So welcome everybody to the launch of the Tees Valley Combined Authority Delivering Social Impact for Local Communities webinar. I will just briefly run you through a few slides. We do have a couple of members of staff from TVCA with us, Jackie and Jan, and Jackie's going to run through part of the presentation as well. We do have time for any questions at the end, so if you can just keep them for then, or feel free to drop them in the chat if you think about them on your way through, and then we can kind of cover them over if that's okay. So in terms of the programme, is that not moving? Sorry, let me just, oh, there we go. So I'm just going to firstly introduce Edge Innovation, and then I'll take you through all the details of the programme before we hand over to Jackie, who will give you the finer details. So as it says on the screen, I'm Susan Ross and I'm Head of Projects at Edge Innovation. Edge Innovation is a Northeast based design thinking organisation. So what that means is that we really help businesses from very small to very large to develop better products and services and processes, really focused on human-centred design and people-centred design, which means that we're really focused on making sure that whatever those processes or services or products are really meet the needs of the final customers that they want to support with. We do work right across the globe technically, so we work from Chicago to Shanghai with some of the very large multinational companies we work with, but we also have a very local focus in the Northeast and do an awful lot of work in the Teesside in particular at the moment, which is fantastic. We work with a whole range of different organisations, like I say, from sole traders to very large multinationals to university and academia institutions, local government and NHS trusts. So it's a really very diverse portfolio that we have. As I mentioned, we really focus on human-centred design in particular. So that's really about putting people right at the heart of developing new products and services. We also take a very lean approach to it. So we're trying to always make sure that it's a strategic approach so that we minimise any waste and prioritise experimentation so that we can try and fail fast and cheap, or if that's the outcome, but really to create those better products and services that meet that customer need. And we do a lot around open innovation. So it's about building pathways and collaboration to really foster that mutual benefit across different organisations. And I think this is a perfect example of where we do that really well, where we're bringing together SMEs with larger organisations to try and create that open collaboration and open innovation. So the Tees Valley Innovation Challenge programme itself. So it is funded through Tees Valley Combined Authority, and that's funded directly through the UK government. It is through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and we as Edge Innovation are the lead partner on it. And we also have our partner Health Innovation North East and North Cumbria, which are particularly looking after the healthcare side of the challenge. So what is the challenge? The challenge is made up of 4 different areas, which I'll talk you through in just a second. But what it's really about is trying to strengthen innovation maturity right across the Tees Valley economy, to really support innovative businesses, to get them where they want to be and to develop their organisational goals and objectives, and to support them with that through coaching and mentoring, and also to ultimately unlock the growth for those organisations right across the Tees Valley. We do this through a range of different support, from tailored business solutions to innovation training, and also creating the Tees Valley as a real hub for innovation. It's very much focused on Tees Valley organisations, obviously being funded through the Combined Authority. We are predominantly looking to support SMEs through it. So that's organisations with less than 250 employees and a turnover of less than 50 million. But however, we are working with some larger organisations within that as well, as you'll see with the Combined Authority and some of our other partners. What that means is we have 4 routes to support, which I'll very briefly talk you through in a moment. That is going to result also in 10 innovation challenges across 7 key themed areas. and ultimately £130,000 of funding awarded to 30 SMEs through that programme. So these are our 4 areas of support. So our first one is the Innovation Challenge, and that's the one I'm going to talk you through in a lot of detail today. And that's where we're connecting up large organisations with SMEs who can respond to a specific challenge set out by the challenge holders, which are the large organisations. And we're going to fund 30 organisations through that process. We have one-to-one support where we have specialist coaches within different thematic areas and sectors who can really support organisations to develop their organisational objectives and accelerate that process for them so that they're meeting those with the products and services and processes they deliver. We have some very bespoke innovation training, which is specifically around design-led innovation to help organisations to create new products and services or processes to unlock that growth. And that can be right from a very, very early idea to pivot in something they may already have within the market. And then our final support route is the Innovation Showcase, which is happening in the Tees Valley in March next year. Provisionally, we've got a date for the 12th of March, so get it in your diaries while you can, and more detail will be coming out about that very soon. But that's really going to be about where we promote the Tees Valley as a very exciting hub for innovation. We want to connect some very ambitious SMEs with their potential collaborators and customers and access to finance through that. And we're also giving 50 SMEs the chance to exhibit at that exhibition and that innovation showcase. And that'll be free of charge for those organisations that are eligible and make it through the selection process for that. So moving on to the Innovation Challenge in a bit more detail. So what it's all about is basically connecting SMEs, or as we call them in this process, solution developers, supporting them to respond to the needs set out by the challenge holder, which is the large organisation. In today's case, that's Tees Valley Combined Authority. Edge and Health Innovation North East and North Cumbria, we're the delivery partners who facilitate that process. So initially we scope out the needs with the challenge holders, like we've done with Tees Valley Combined Authority, and help them to identify what that challenge is and exactly what they're looking for. And then we're opening that up, as we are today, to the SMEs who can actually really come up with some interesting, innovative and disruptive ideas to then collaborate with the large challenge holder. So as I mentioned, we've got 10 challenges being launched. One's already closed already, which was the CTA challenge. We've got one with Liani Tech. We've got one with Middlesbrough College around AI misuse. There's another one with Middlesbrough Football Club around fan engagement. One with South Tees NHS Trust, which is specifically looking at product design around a training mannequin for the hip spiker application. So there's a real varied array of challenges coming out, and we've got some more exciting ones in the pipeline. And obviously we're delighted to announce this one today, which is specifically looking around social impact linked into procurement. As I mentioned earlier, it does involve grant funding as well, and I'll talk you through the process of that in 1 second. But we are really focused on making sure that the organisations that come forward really can respond to those challenges that are set out by the challenge holder. So these are our key areas that we're working within. So there are 7 ones there on the screen. I'm not going to talk you through them all. All I will say is that what we're finding is with a lot of the challenges that are coming forward, they fit multiple different areas. So we are kind of really aware that these are the areas we're working within, but are not kind of restrictive to just those areas, and multiples of them will be able to cross-cut as such. So this is a little process map of how it works. We've got those 7 themed areas. We're having 10 challenges across there, of which this is one of those. Today is the day where we basically publicise that challenge, tell you about it, and specifically try and engage SMEs into that process. What we're going to do is select approximately 3 SMEs per challenge area, which ultimately means 30 SMEs. Those that get through the application process, which is a relatively short application form, just detailing what you would do to respond to that challenge, what your approach is and who the team is. If you get through that, you initially get a grant of £1,000 to help you scope that challenge out. You then get the opportunity to pitch back to the challenge holder, and again, in this case, TVCA. And from that, we will shortlist one in each of the challenge areas to go on to win a further £10,000 to actually put that solution into place, to then work with the challenge holder to develop that solution, and then hopefully go on to have that partnership with them moving forward in the future. And obviously we'll evaluate the programme as well to see how it's all worked and what the outcomes of that are. So I'm going to now pass you over to Jackie Note-Young, who's the Group Procurement and Purchasing Manager at the Combined Authority, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the challenge in the detail behind it as such. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Susan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, I'm Jackie Note-Young. I'm the Group Procurement and Purchasing Manager. And I've got Jan Bromley with me, who's our Social Value Officer in the Combined Authority. A bit of an overview, a lot of you will probably know, but we look after everything within Tees Valley Combined Authority itself. We procure on behalf of the Teesside International Airport. We've got three mayoral development corporations now. South Tees Development Corporation, which is the old SSI steelwork site that we're doing a lot of work on, and we've set up one in Hartlepool and one in Middlesbrough more recently. So we spend a lot of money. Social value is obviously quite important. I'll come on to later, but we put a 20% weighting on social value. Anything that's got a value over £100,000, we put a 20% weighting on social value. And when we were first approached about this challenge, there's some things that I'll touch on that we're already looking at and we're already doing and trying to drive those improvements so that our social value has a better impact. But we thought that this just fit nicely with what we were trying to do and enhance some of the stuff that we've already got going on. So really, as it says on the slides there, our focus is economic growth and equity, and we want to empower the small and medium enterprises to drive social value initiatives. It is really important to us, and we spend a lot of money, so we want our social value to have as meaningful impact as it can really in the area. Our goal is to reshape the social value implementation, enhance the competitiveness in procurement, and help SMEs and supply support for their bids. So the challenge context, we want to award more contracts to local SMEs because we know that that'll boost the regional economic growth. The new procurement regulation should help with that in terms of MAT rather than meat, and we can look at different specifics of how we look to award those contracts, steering more towards local people, so that's a good thing. SMEs sometimes we feel struggle to meet the social value requirements and often face that competition from larger companies that have got that resource. We're improving the procurement, as we've said. We're enhancing the collaboration between our project teams as well, because historically and sometimes even now, social value within procurement is seen as a procurement-only responsibility. And we've got a lot of project teams here that have got a lot of in-depth knowledge of what's going on locally, possibly more than the procurement team. So we're really trying to work on linking that together. So that's one of the outcomes that we'd like to see. We do use the TOMs. We've developed a social value calculator in the tender packs, and that's specifically aimed at SMEs, really, with a lot of guidance notes and examples and things of how they can complete that to try and help. We're looking at digital dashboards for tracking, and we're looking at a matching service as well, as it says there. So any new solutions we'd like to align with those tools, and that's some of the things that are not fully implemented, but we're already working on at the moment. So the challenge in a nutshell. So the problems, as we see them, are sometimes that we know SMEs struggle with social value requirements and they'll potentially lose out on contracts to some of the larger suppliers. We think sometimes there is a perception of the complexity in terms of the procurement process with it being public sector full stop, which might put people off. And then that's a lack of engagement with SMEs, which is really the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. The current processes can be resource intensive internally and externally, and that engagement can then be limited for the time that we have. We want to increase the understanding and the communication of social value leads and increase the impact and get those better outcomes, as I've said earlier. So people, the challenge, so knowledge and understanding. So SMEs tend to struggle with social value, and we know that by some of the tenders that we get. We can tend to get that unfocused impact. So that lack of understanding really means sometimes they'll have an over-reliance on guidance from us as to what they can provide for social value, or they'll provide something that they've already provided for another tender, not understanding that they can't do that. It's got to be additionality. So there is definitely a lack of understanding. We perceive in terms of networks, and this may not be the case, but we're a step removed from that, I feel. So there's a perception that there's a lack of visibility and connection between SMEs and the VCSEs. and that will limit the range of social value initiatives that come from a procurement. Again, that's missed opportunities with SMEs, which we really want to avoid, because we're not getting that diversity in suppliers and the local benefits. And again, the perception of the complexity of social value. If you don't have the resource and you're a small company, you might feel that it's just not worth you putting a tender in for one of our opportunities, which is a shame. The lack of impact, so poorly constructed social value proposals fail to address the community needs as well, so we're missing opportunities there. Challenges in generating that impact. So with current development and implementation of social value frameworks, for example, trying to standardise as much as we can to make that a little bit easier for the SMEs, and we want to increase that impact. Traceability as well of the outcomes is important. So relationships between VCSEs and SMEs, I've touched on that. That's our perception that there's a disconnect, because we get that repetitiveness sometimes, as though the SMEs are not really connected with what's going on in the local community. So I don't see how we can get the best impact if they don't have that knowledge. Current social value programmes can undermine the VCSEs by being too generic, and we've certainly seen that. And then we'd like to get to a point where they're co-developing these programmes, and then it's more sustainable and it'll release pressure on them and have a better impact. If there's a limited knowledge of social value in public procurement, it leads to unfair distribution of social impact and disadvantaging other organisations in the Tees Valley. So generic social value. So the current approach followed by SMEs creates outcomes that are uncoordinated, repetitive, and don't always meet the needs of the community, is what we find. Hopefully investment should provide communities with resources and motivation to become more self-sufficient moving forward. So as I said earlier, the large organisations, they do have the capacity to put forward a social value offering, but often that's very generic. And they don't always have those links into the local community. So again, it's sometimes missing the mark as well. So we could probably do better with those, not just the SMEs, the bigger companies as well. Again, the perception of social value, some businesses really do see that as a necessary evil. It's just something that they have to do. So it can become a bit of a tick box exercise, which again, isn't what we're after. And then currently what we do, so the current state of where we are. So before the tender, the proposal's developed usually by the internal procurement team. We do hold information sessions where we can, and we have done things outside of the tender process with supply chains to try and grow that understanding and clarify requirements before we go out to tender where we can. So if we do any market engagement and things like that, we'll try and make sure that that's encompassed into that, so they go into it with a better idea of what we want. During the tender, when the tenders are submitted, there's obviously specific documentation is shared with them to support the submissions, including the clarification period, and we get a lot of questions around social value, even with, I think you'll agree, the social value calculator, even though that's included with a lot of guidance, we still get a lot of questions around it, which says to me there's still a bigger lack of understanding of what we would like to see. After the tender at the moment, the procurement team tend to do most of the evaluations, although we are rolling that out more internally and trying to involve those project teams that have got that knowledge, because that's really important as well. It's not just our responsibility. And actually some of our project teams, depending on what it is that they're working on, will have those links into the community that we just don't have. So it's trying to involve them in that as well. And then future states, so what we'd like to see, obviously improved engagement with suppliers prior to tenders, which will lead to a clearer understanding and obviously better bids as well. And I think that's really important, because that's our responsibility as well, to understand the local needs as our internal project teams, not just the supplier. So if our project teams understand it and we're liaising with the supplier, we should all be a bit more joined up on that approach. And I don't feel that we always are at the moment. Guidance and support would be efficiently delivered to SMEs, ultimately, obviously increasing the number of successful submissions. Our teams coordinate on the refinement of the desired social impact. So we'll go out with something meaningful and impactful, hopefully. And then after the tender, obviously clear communication of the expectations would lead to higher quality submissions, more meaningful reports, which is really important because we're always asked on what we've delivered. And if it's been structured poorly in the first place, it's often really difficult to report on of what we've actually got from that. And then feedback to suppliers in a constructive way that's easy to understand. So if they still haven't been successful, at least they will understand why and what they can do better next time. So progress, efficient communication. So we hopefully spend less time sharing information. Communication could be more streamlined, clear and effective. High performance social value, so contract requirements and measurements are clear and issues consistent delivery of promised social value, making it integral to contract compliance and outcomes, especially so in the new procurement regulations as well, where there's more transparency and more of a focus on managing those contracts through to the end. And again, clear reporting. So if we had clear reporting, we could show those outcomes and sharing those success stories, which would be great. So what's in and out of scope? So I mentioned earlier some of the things that we're already touching on. So a matching service between private and voluntary sector, a start has already been made on that. We've had some input into that at the moment, but it's currently with another team. But again, that's something that we're developing, as well as a digital dashboard linked to social value activities and reporting. And then development of a funding system dedicated to community impact, which I think we're calling the Community Investment Fund.
It is at the moment, Community Investment
And
Funds.
that's in development at the moment. So that's not something that we're looking for, because it's something that we're already in development of. What we would be looking for is that coordinated, evidence-driven solution, support to support the developments and awareness of skills about social value for supply chains. Obviously, we're quite a small team, but we'd really welcome how we could get out to more people and deliver this message and support with training and things like that. It absolutely ticks the boxes of what we want to do. Growing internal knowledge about social value as well. Adoption of frameworks where possible, so everything's quite standardised. Develop awareness of social value opportunities within the VC/SE sector, which I think is something that we're possibly missing, and help grow the networks and connection between the two, the SMEs and that voluntary sector, really. And I think this.
Yes, sorry, Jackie, I was just trying to unmute myself. So in terms of the process, we will have the application online later on today. So you can go onto the Edge website, and the links are at the end of the presentation of where you can find all of that information. You'll be able to review this as well, because we will save it onto the website as well. But effectively, the application deadline is for the Thursday, the 10th of October at 5 o'clock. We'll then review the application forms the week commencing the 14th of October, and hope to notify the successful applicants that week as well. We've then been looking for the applicants to obviously work through their scope and pitch back to the Combined Authority the week commencing the 9th of December. And the whole programme needs to be wrapped up and closed by the 31st of March. So this will move very quickly, as you can see from the timeframes on there. So we are looking for, initial scopes coming forward. Do we have any questions that we'd like to bring up? And I'm just going to move this one forward, because that's the details if you want to click on to finding out more information about the Social Impact Challenge, or to register your notification any future challenges. You can do that through our website, and they're the kind of QR codes if you want to scan those. So shall we open up to questions if anybody has any? Jamie, have you got a question? Was that your hand going up?
Sorry, I've been using Teams and now I'm on Zoom. I was looking for the hand, raise my hand thing.
I'm exactly
I was doing the same, trying to find the mute.
So the project closes is March. Is that for like when the project is delivered, like the full project, or just the scoping, just like the?
Yeah, no, everything from our point of view needs to be rounded up by the end of March. So all of the that initial £10,000 needs to be spent within that period of time. Obviously, the relationship can continue on beyond that, and more of the development might happen after that period of time. But initially, it needs to be scoped out and completed by the end of March, so that we can feed back to the Combined Authority, who obviously we're reporting on behalf of for the programme. So we need to report back to them in terms of what's been achieved over that period of time. So that's why that's a kind of hard fixed deadline at that stage.
I do have another, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I think for Jackie, I suppose, but like, thinking about the you mentioned around using the TOMS framework as still the measures. Are you wedded to TOMS as I know there's things about 80 odd different outcomes that are listed in TOMS, whereas there are potential other social outcomes that could be measured in a different way. So I just wondered how, if you could tell us a little bit more about that side of the project.
I think we started off with the social value portal, which we moved away from and developed our own process. But we do use the TOMS, which have been agreed at our board level, really. But are we wedded to them? No, Jamie, we're not. And I think actually one of the things about this challenge, which is interesting, is it opens up for that innovation for something different. Because we could look at the TOMS every week and come up with a different set that we're going to use for each project. I don't always think that helps our SMEs either. Yeah. And we try and have a bit of a standard set, and then 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 different ones, depending on the sort of project. But I think we'd absolutely be open to something else, even if it was measured in a different way. If that's what gets us the impact and the results, then we should be open to all of that. And I'm sure we are. Yeah,
brilliant. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Any other questions for anybody else? Liz, you've turned off your mute, so I'm guessing one's coming from you, is it?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the hand. I'm like, I don't actually know where it is. So if anybody can tell me, just let me know. Anyway, just to ask you, Jackie, it's a couple of questions. Firstly, it would be, I was curious to know kind of what's the level of spend that you have with SMEs at the moment, if that's something that you've got to hand. And the second question was, have you got any priorities? So there's obviously outcomes that you've described within there, which are all fine, absolutely brilliant. But sometimes it's like, what's the stuff you're emotionally connected to? As in, that is just the one thing I just want to try and get sorted out through this. What does success look like for you?
Yeah, okay. I think in terms of level of SME spend, I don't have it to hand, but I can get you that, obviously. Yeah, in terms of what we're emotionally connected to, I feel that that's one of our issues, because we're quite disjointed as an organisation in terms of this sort of thing. So when I said earlier on, it's very much seen as a procurement thing. Yeah. It's sometimes quite difficult for me or for us at the beginning of a project to find out what outcomes we actually want from social value for that. And I don't know whether that's a problem elsewhere, but it's certainly one within our organisation. And that's something we're trying to get better at, because there'll be other teams that are out there doing different things, which will absolutely know what good looks like for us. And I think that's part of the challenge internally for us to link into that, so that we understand that as well as a whole organisation.
So it's a little bit like knowing what you don't know to a certain degree.
Yes.
How can we help to kind of know what you don't know about the community and what's right for them? Okay, that's great. Thank you.
No problem. John,
I think you were next.
Yeah, thanks very much, Susan. How long should it take before an impact is known? Is that something that you have any sort of sense of at all? If there's to be a social impact as a consequence of doing something, how long will it take to know that? And how does that align with the timescales of this programme?
Sorry, John, do you mean in terms of actually through a procurement tender, what the impact of that would be? Or do you mean in terms of for this project as such, as part of the programme?
I think primarily for this project. If somebody's successful in doing some work on this project, and therefore needs to demonstrate social impact or have a process for doing so, it might take 6 months, might take 10 years. What's your sort of thoughts on that?
I think, to be fair, I think that's why, when we said we need to deliver something by the end of March, but that process could continue to go on longer than that. But initially we would award the £10,000 and kind of sign off that work as such within the end of March timescale. But that might then continue. It might take longer before actually a process is adopted within the combined authority to fully make that happen. So we're kind of starting that process off. And obviously we need to be able to evidence the value that we've created for the £10,000 that's spent within that period of time. But ultimately, we hope that it'll be a much longer term partnership for any of the challenges that we're creating, to be fair, not just this one, and that there'll be that ongoing relationship with the solution developer that gets chosen to go forward at that stage.
Yeah, so that means there needs to be some impact within the period by end of March in that case.
We'd need to be able to evidence that a solution's being developed within that time, but it may be that takes longer to fully develop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think in terms of us, just to add to that, if someone had developed something and we all felt that it was such a fantastic impact at the end, if it takes 5 years, it takes 5 years, and if that's the best outcome, then that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
We had a question from Greg as well, or a hand up from Greg, I believe.
Yeah, sorry, I loaded by mistake. I haven't got my camera on just because I'm sat in my car because I'm out at an event, so I didn't want to miss this. I'm Greg Chapman from MGL Group. We do quite a few tenders for through TVCA, and the NTs that come through on the social value calculator are all quite standard every time we get them. But I do know that we have tendered for other jobs for other local authorities, and they're sometimes put on the end. I don't know what it is off by heart, but is it any other initiative you could use where you could be quite open about what you could use? Because at MGL we do vast amounts of stuff and capture like tonnage waste and reuse of waste, and I just didn't know if they could, the TVCA could maybe just add that NT on the bottom of the calculator, just so we can share all the other things instead of being stuck with the TOMs that you put on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Yeah, I'm working out of that, and I think that ties into something else that we're developing in terms of the community impact fund as well, where we do intend to have other options. But actually, that's probably a quick fix that we could look to do.
Yeah, I think for us, the TOMs that were actually selected back in 2019 by the mayor and obviously the board, and it kind of fitted in with our corporate social responsibility. It fitted in with the mayor's agenda in terms of local jobs and employment, reduced crime, growth. And I think over a period of time since we've sort of taken on the sort of challenge of driving social value through TVCA, we found that, like Jackie said, a lot of the responses were very competitive, not very competitive, very generic. And so we have a social value working group where we've decided and reviewed all of the TOMs. And we'll look at a new set of measures. So we have agreed some new measures collectively with different directorates, but we're not ready to sort of put those to the board because of the community impact fund that is potentially running alongside that might cover a lot of them, because within the community impact fund there's going to be 3 set priorities, and so we're not quite ready to make those changes yet, but we have on occasions amended the social value calculator to fit around that particular tender, so it is measurable and meaningful. But yeah, they're sort of set measures that at the time fit with.
I'm quite happy with it as being standard every time we get a tender through, because it makes it a little bit simpler for me, because we know when we get a TVCA tender in, we know that the work that we do, and we can then build on that work that we do. And so I know that it's something like I work with all the local colleges. But sometimes if I don't have that social value commitment, I can't work with them again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think we could look to make that a little bit more flexible in terms of you being able to offer something different. It's just to making sure that it still fits in with how we score and record it in the same as the other things. But we'll take that away with us, Greg. Thank you.
No, 100%. Like I say, it was a Sunderland tender we were putting in, and they just put on the bottom any other, and we were like, oh, that's fantastic, because we can just showcase everything else that we do that we couldn't showcase with just the TOMs that they were challenging us for, asking us for. Sorry.
Thank you.
No problem.
I notice we've got a couple of questions in the chat from Amy. I don't know if you want to ask them, Amy, yourself, or if you would just want me to read those out as such. I'll give you a second in case you want to come online. If not, I'll just read them. Read out, please, no problem. So Amy says, one of the biggest challenges for SMEs providing significant social value is that it's a huge investment for small companies to provide resources for free on top of delivering a contract. Can the solution provide additional benefits to the businesses above better understanding of social value procurement, as well as the VCSEs? And there's a second question as well that says, if the main applicant is based in the Tees Valley, can subcontractors be based elsewhere in the UK? Jackie, shall I pass to you initially in terms of the first part of that question, and then I'll
just read that out again, Susan. Sorry.
Yeah. So obviously she mentions about the fact that it's quite an extra ask for SMEs in terms of the investment that they have to provide to deliver resources for free on top of the existing contract. Could the solution provide additional benefits to the businesses above better understanding of social value procurement, as well as the VCSEs? So can it provide additional benefits to the businesses as well as to the VCSEs?
I mean, I don't see why not. I think one of the reasons that we try and keep it standard and more straightforward is for that reason, that we know that people don't have that resource, and the more elaborate and the more options we give people, the more complicated it makes it. So yeah, I mean, I would be open to them getting additional benefits. Yeah, and I think actually, if part of the solution is some of the ideas of what we can deliver more to support that as well, then we're open to that. That's one of the reasons why we're here.
Thank you, Jackie. The other part of the question was, if the main applicant is based in Tees Valley, can subcontractors be based elsewhere in the UK? Our focus here is very much on supporting Tees Valley based organisations. Yeah. That's really important. However, I guess if there was an element that had to be delivered by a subcontractor elsewhere, we'd need to review that. But obviously, fundamentally, we want to make sure that the benefit of that is residing with Tees Valley based SMEs predominantly. But we could review that as part of the application process. Yeah. If the bulk of it went to a subcontractor, I think that wouldn't be likely to get funded, in all honesty. It's just another question. So thanks from Amy. Does anybody else have any questions at all? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for your time and attending today. If you do have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll drop my email address into the chat so that if there are any queries, you can just come back to me directly. And hopefully we'll get some really exciting applications coming through. Just
thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.